In three, two, one. Hello, and welcome to Know the Score. I'm your host, Don Delarente, and I'm joined this week by the Libra icon, Dwayne. What's going on, bud?
Hey man, how's it going? I've
I'm,
been running around, but I hope you're good. Hope everybody's good though.
oh, yeah, man, everything's good on my end, just chilling. Shortly, I'm about to take a trip to Wakanda and let everybody else go, and then I'll just join y'all and tell y'all about
Dude,
my experiences later on.
definitely share your experiences. You will enjoy it. Trust me.
Know the Score is brought to you by CSPN. You can find us at cspn.us. You can also find us on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher Radio, and Google Play. You can follow us on Twitter at KTSPod. You can follow me on Twitter at Don Delarente, and you can follow Dwayne on Twitter at the Libra Icon. So, Dwayne, we thought it was going to be a rather slow week in sports. I mean, we've got the Olympics going on. Shout out to the women's hockey team finally defeating Canada to win the gold. But,
Absolutely.
but on Friday, the FBI said, "Hold my beer," and they dropped an information bomb on college basketball as Yahoo Sports released a report that implicates major blue blood college basketball programs in a money scandal. Players from more than 20 Division One men's programs have been identified as possibly breaking NCAA rules through violations that were uncovered by the FBI investigation. At least 25 players are linked to impermissible benefits, including Michigan State's Miles Bridges, Alabama's Colin Sexton, and Duke's Wendell Carter. Now, what makes those three guys really significant is they're current players. They're currently active, eligible players. Um, and another layer to this is an FBI investigation. This is not an NCAA thing. So technically, they can remain eligible because this is not an NCAA um, situation. So there's this thing is multi-layered. It all stems from a former NBA agent, Andy Miller, and his agency ASM Sports, and the documents that the FBI has uncovered from 2015 to 2017 that show cash advances, entertainment, as well as travel expenses paid for college prospects and their families. So, Dwayne, before we start getting into kind of some more individual players and numbers, just kind of your first reaction to when you first saw this news drop Friday morning, early on Friday morning.
Well, this was pretty much a ongoing thing. I kind of knew there were several teams involved, but knowing that you got the top four winningest programs involved: Kentucky, Duke, Kansas, and North Carolina. Of course, it's not in that particular order, but you have a situation where a lot of these players, these families, the NCAA is a scam as it is. I mean, they're under the facade of amateurism, and these players are given their bodies, their athletic ability, their athletic gifts, and getting virtually nothing. So, you're in a situation where you're starving, you get paid nothing to sacrifice everything. I mean, you sacrifice classes, you sacrifice social time, you sacrifice so much. And so sometimes it's in a situation where you got to do what you have to do to survive. And so knowing now that the programs that are involved and there are coaches who are legitimately oblivious to what's going on. They let their assistants handle a lot of situations, and these rogue assistants will do whatever it takes to get some of their players to come, and whether it's helping out with money, helping out with entertainment here or there. Of course, you're under the impression, hey, I do this for you, just pay me back when, or if you make it big, whether it's in professional sports or something else. And so now you just gotta really let the process play out because not you got the implications are just what it is. It's implied that it's happening. That's why the investigation goes on. And I think as long as these schools and these programs cooperate with the FBI, like you said, Don, it's a federal investigation versus a NCAA investigation. So you got to let this process play out and just see what's going to happen. If you're a fan of this team, just be patient and just hope that not your school ain't affected, your team ain't affected by it.
Right. Some of the numbers that came out, it was reported that Dennis Smith Jr. Received $73,500 in loans from ASM before he played for NC State. Isaiah Whitehead, during his freshman season at Seton Hall, reportedly received $26,000, according to the documents. And Bam Adebayo, who would play for Kentucky in 2016, reportedly received $36,500. Um, the thing about NCAA violations, though, those are some of the larger numbers, of course, but they also detailed dinners and meetings and lunches and things like that were picked up, because in the guidelines of the NCAA, anything that a kid gets that his parents or the school or athletic department doesn't provide is an improper benefit. So if you saw a kid out and bought him some McDonald's, basically you could get somebody on probation for that. So, these are just kind of the rules that, they're antiquated because the NCAA was founded on corruption. And so
Exactly.
they kind of built this thing to kind of stop that, but it's never stopped. So it just
Yeah.
goes on.
And pretty much, and you're right, it goes on, and it's going to continue to go on as long as somebody's keeping score. Like, as long as there's competition and the score is being played, and you're trying to get to the levels of the blue bloods and things like that, you're going to do whatever it takes to get there. And so, as long as there's a score being kept, these things are going to happen, especially under this facade of amateurism. And I'm with a lot of people that say pay the players. It's just how are you going to do it and how are you going to do it fairly, where things are going to be fair for other programs, other student athletes, who are in the lesser programs. And also, you got to look at Title IX, how you going to make it equal for the women's athletics, too.
Yeah, that's always been the sticking point in this, is because you only have two true revenue drawing sports in college, and that is football and basketball. And presumably, if they combine the resources of both those programs in one athletic department, they could probably figure out an even number to give to all the other athletes, and that's including rowing and fencing and soccer and tennis. And you can't
Mm-hmm.
just think about but you got about 100 guys, 120 guys on a football team in college, and 15 guys on a basketball team. So it's like 145 people will basically
Right.
supplement, all the athletics. And they've been doing it since the beginning of the structure. So it wouldn't be anything different. It would just be that, the lesser sports would, still get a part of it too, in an equal part, because they're all athletes, they're all going through the same rigors, and like you said, they give up their time, they give up their abilities to really be true students. They're not really a part of the student body, especially the athletes that are in basketball and football, because they're
Right.
so separated. They have study halls, and the only time that they're really a part of the real student body is when they're sports aren't in season, and when they have a little dead periods between the trainings where they don't, they're not, where the coaches can't work them out or anything like that. Then that's the only time where they're actually like true students, where they're eating with the regular student bodies and going to the classes and doing that thing like that. So, um,
Right.
you know, a lot of people don't understand the Ivy Leagues used to be the biggest thing in the country in the beginning of college sports, and football and basketball both got brought down because of corruption, because you know the kids understand that, hey, going to college, any kid who's been to college understands that if you got a chance to get money, you kind of take it if you can, you
Exactly.
know.
By any means necessary.
Yeah,
I know.
if it means going to sit at a lecture and then, you know, all of a sudden they say, hey, you know, we have a work study, you know, that we're apply for it. You know, you can get 8 hours a week doing this work study. Hey, you know, people do it. So,
You're right.
you know, these things happen. Now, unfortunately, of course, the nightmare would be that a head coach, like you said, most of these head coaches kind of, you know, use their as quote unquote runners or assistant coaches to kind of handle this type of deals when they're doing these underhanded things. But the nightmare would be that a head coach would directly be involved. And that seems that that is the case with Arizona head coach Sean Miller, as FBI wiretaps intercepted telephone conversations in which Sean Miller discussed paying $100,000 to ensure star freshman DeAndre Ayton signed with the Arizona Wildcats. DeAndre Ayton is an Arizona Wildcat. He is projected to be the number one player selected in next year's NBA draft, or this year's, excuse me, this year's NBA draft later this year in June. And now it looks like the coach and the player are going to be suspended for an indefinite amount of time, as you know they go through this you know, investigation internally with the school, you know, figuring it, because they don't have any of these conversations. So anything that they're learning at Arizona, they're finding out just like we all are through media reports, Yahoo reports, and what comes out in the news agencies. So now talk about Sean Miller, and you know how Keystone Cop is he, amateur crook is he, and kind of what this will do as far as trickle down effect for coaches and recruiting.
It's over for Sean Miller. He might as well just start packing up his office and let Arizona. This isn't an athletic department thing anymore. This is something that needs to be handled by the president, the school board of regents, whatever they may have at U of A, and this is gonna. Arizona's is a desirable destination, is a desirable job, but you have to consider cleaning house, especially if Sean Miller knew, if the athletic department, the AD knew what was going on, and you got to sit DeAndre Ayton. And if you're Arizona, you want to kind of, if this is true, and if you can sit up here and say that's not your voice, and you have a distinct voice, that's not gonna look good. It's not gonna be a good look. So I think for Sean Miller, a it's gonna be a very, very swift life comes at you fast situation where it's it's over, and it's gonna trickle down to the assistants. It's gonna trickle down to other head coaches. Like you said, and like we both said, it's going to be one of those things where we have a situation where either the coaches knew of the situation, uh, or they didn't know, and some coaches are going to they're going to go through this information, make sure it's credible, make sure there's any past players or current players, just thoroughly make sure everything is credible, and if they do have to go through and go through the process, they will have no choice. Actually, I do know that a couple of players, parents, and the players themselves have come out and either said I haven't taken anything, or of the sort of I will just let the process play out. I know Josh Jackson, he was implicated, but his mother immediately came out and said, I did not take any money from ASM. And I've had one or two conversations with Christian Dawkins, who's another key figure in this case as well.
Yeah, it's Sean Miller, if these allegations are true, he's going to be facing, federal charges. So, just coaching again, the NCAA will be the least of his worries. He's going to be
Right,
facing, jail.
federal charges, jail time, and even when he, depend on if he gets a plea deal or something and doesn't serve any jail time, he's going to be on a show cause, and that's going to last either 5 to 10 years as well. So he's going to need to find a new line of work pretty much at this point.
Right. This is actually even worse than the Todd Bozeman scandal because at least Todd Bozeman, even at a lower level, got back into coaching.
Yeah,
But
because he served that show cause at Cal, and then he became the head coach at Morgan State. So
right, right. But he wasn't facing going to jail though. He just,
right,
he just had to sit
exactly,
out. He just couldn't coach in college for a few years.
exactly.
So, as we said, this is just, a beginning of the iceberg. Of course, this all started with um, just the Adidas school being implicated. But of course, once the FBI got involved, they, started casting their net and just, did the whole sport. And now they're, uncovering, everybody's done something. What level you've done it may vary. You've got the lesser, like we said, the lesser kind of things where, you may have met a kid and then, he walks away and then you pay for the lunch and then that's, considered improper benefit. Or you've got, guys reportedly, you know, getting large sums of money to, and the scam was basically they would get the money and they would basically kind of promise to sign with the agency and sign with a certain agent to kind of help them recoup their money back. It's basically kind of what the situation was. So again, for a lot of people, this is nothing new for college athletics, college basketball, college football. There's always been talks of the $100 handshakes and the boosters that wealthy boosters hiring guys at their car dealerships, paying them thousands of dollars just to wash cars or whatever. So there's always been workarounds and other means and ways to kind of do this, but this has kind of been the most blatant and widespread recent discovery of it in the information age. There've been different scandals throughout college sports, point shaving and recruiting and things like that, but nothing this widespread outside of the NCAA. Like, I don't think that people grasp that this isn't just college, the NCAA cracking down on itself. This is like the feds cracking down on everybody.
Everybody. It's going to be a seismic shift if everybody is convicted. And it's going to be a very seismic shift in the landscape of college basketball as a whole. Like, how do you, as
in general, because somebody's gonna have an inkling. Well, if they're dirty in basketball and there's only so few players, what are they doing over there in football?
right, and football's huge. Football, I mean, basketball is probably. I think they have one of the bigger I think it's slightly bigger than the football contract, but you are right though. It's gonna transfer over to football, and Lord knows how many schools are going to be implicated there.
Right. So, but what may come out of this is the NCAA is definitely going to have to, change their language and their rules and how they operate. And in the end, the FBI may be responsible for finally getting these kids paid.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I don't think the country at this point has a problem with that. I mean, every other kid in college has an ability to go to work at wherever, the library, Chick-fil-A, Foot Locker, while they're in college, internships as they get older in their careers. And the athletes cannot, due to old NCAA rules that are afraid of people getting corrupted when in actuality, by them not being able to get paid is what's corrupting them. So,
It's the facade of amateurism at the end of the day. That's what's causing this whole corruption situation and what's illegal. And like I said, it's a very antiquated situation and rules, and it's under the facade of amateurism. And if college athletics simply ends amateurism, then that will go a very long way in helping this situation out.
right. So, will definitely be more to come on this in the weeks and months to come. But it's definitely for this weekend. And we've got the big week in college basketball. This is the end of the regular season that's coming up next Saturday. Rivalry games and conference titles are going to be decided, but nobody's going to be really talking about much of that because this is the big story in all sports right now. So we'll see what comes of this,
Yeah,
in the weeks and months to come.
yeah, absolutely.
This is Know the Score. I'm joined by the legal icon. I'm Don De Laurenti. We're going to shift over to the NBA. On last Sunday night, the NBA All-Star game took place, and Team LeBron, they came back in the fourth quarter, spirited defense, some clutch shot making to defeat Team Steph, 148 to 145. LeBron James, MVP of the All-Star game. So very competitive, a lot more defense than we've seen in the past. Team Steph kind of got cold there in the end, and Team LeBron smelled some blood, and they made the winning plays. DeMar DeRozan gets trapped there in the corner and can't get a shot off to try to tie the game after they inbounded the ball to Steph. He brought the ball up court. Of course, they double teamed immediately. Then once he passed to DeRozan, he was double teamed. And LeBron looked like he won like game 6 of the finals or something when he was about to maybe get eliminated or something. So he was pretty excited about the outcome. What do you think about the game? Did you think it was more competitive? Did you like the format of after all, with the two teams and kind of splitting up the talent?
I did. I enjoyed the game overall. Very competitive. The players did take it a lot more seriously, like they said they would, and even though we won't get the 200 point game for a while or a long time or ever, it was a good game overall. Team Steph was pretty much in control the whole time, and I think the karma from laughing at Fergie's anthem probably came back to bite them. And LeBron's team ended up playing very well and getting the win. So it was a very competitive game. The format is brilliant. I think it needs to be either televised before on the Friday night before All Star Weekend, like right before the celebrity game. Have the All Star draft, and then or do it right before the game. Like really, like have everybody line up, have the captain's pick right then and there, and then go from there. But little tweaks or anything can be done before it comes to Charlotte next year. I would like to see purple and Team Purple versus Team Teal, and whoever the captain is can run the show. But good game from both teams. I think everybody had fun as and also handled their business too.
Right, right. Yeah, I think they if they continue to do this, that would be a good idea to kind of use the whoever host team, their colors as the jersey colors, because like a purple team versus a gold team would have been pretty cool to see those different team logos on those jerseys.
Hmm.
But I think that's kind of why they went with the black and white, because that kind of cuts down on there may be some copyrights and things like that
Yeah,
they may have to work around
right.
to kind of do that. But yeah, it's kind of why the All Star jerseys have always either been, the blue and white back in the day, or the red and white back in the day, with just the All
Yeah,
Stars that said East and West, or they just
yeah,
played in the straight up, team jerseys, like everybody's in their regular uniform.
yeah,
So there may be some copyright things that they can't, get around to kind of do that. But yeah, that would be cool to kind of, every year, the two team colors, the red and away colors, are the All Star jerseys. During that All Star weekend, of course, Adam Silver has his state of kind of NBA, talks with the media, and a couple of things came out. He did say that they are thinking about televising the selection process, the picking of the teams for next year's All Star game. And but the biggest news that came out was says that there are serious discussions in changing the playoff format. He said that the best 8 teams from each conference would qualify as normal, and then those teams, once the playoffs started, would be seeded 1 through 16. So you would have kind of like an NCAA tournament bracket style, where the very best team in the league plays the very worst playoff team, and then you kind of get seeded through there. And first round would still be best of 5, and best of 7, best of 7, best of 7. So, Dwayne, I know that we had some, pre-show discussion about this, and you said that you did not like this. So I want to hear from you, what you oppose about this change up, because Adam Silver basically says that since the Western Conference has been so good and there's been so many teams out there that may have had a chance to win a championship, but because they knock each other off, they never really had a serious chance to. This would give more teams, in theory, an opportunity to win the championship.
Okay. Yeah, this is a very bad idea because how many times in the NCAA tournament has a 16 beat a 1?
Hasn't happened yet.
Exactly. So, what makes you think that the Golden State Warriors would lose in a 7-game series in the first round to the Detroit Pistons? So the 1 through 16, the 116, 215, maybe we'll get a 4-13 or a 5-12. But this is not. I'm not a fan of it at all. I think it's. I think it's a very. It's a very. It just doesn't. I mean, what's the point of having conferences at that point? I mean, if you're going to do a 1 through 16, yeah, you get the best 8 or whatever, then you reseed them. It's not going to. It's going to be the same thing. You're going to have 4-game sweeps of the 1 through 16, the 2 through 15, 3 through 14. Well, so like the top 4 or 5 teams literally get a bye because they're going to sweep these other teams. And yes, the West has had the advantage since Shaq left Orlando to LA. It's been all Western Conference pretty much for the most part since he left. You can look at the past champions. And you can really just tell how dominant the East was in the mid '90s, and then when Shaq bolted to LA from Orlando, how everything kind of just shifted to the West and has stayed there since. And so now you have a situation where, yeah, the better teams are in the West and they do knock each other off, but that's just the nature of the beast. And no players want to go East because they don't want to run into LeBron in the playoffs when he goes into 0 dark 30 mode. So I just don't see how reseeding, reshuffling the teams are going to help out. Maybe if they did it similar to the NHL, where you have, you know, top 3 teams in the division go to the playoffs, then you have 2 wild card spots, but it's going to be a little difficult because there's 6 divisions in the NBA, 4 divisions in the NHL. So, if you do it a little differently, maybe have the top 2 teams in the division and then top 2 wildcard teams, have them go at it from there and then see how it plays out. I don't know. I just think the 1 through 16 is going to be even worse than the current 8 on West, 8 on the East.
I've kind of been a proponent of the 1 through 16 but not quite in this formation. I actually like this formation better than my idea. My idea was just always just forget about it and just have one big old season, and everybody's you can stick to where you are, but the best 16 record to make it, and then you go from there. But I like this because you can still have your conferences, you can still have your divisions, and people can still win their divisions and things like that. And then you get the 16 teams that qualify for the playoffs as normal, and just reseed it, and it just freshen it up a little bit. It'd be cool to see the different matchups of, maybe Detroit could give the Warriors 6 games. Maybe they could find a way to, to shoot enough threes in one game to steal one in California and have them come back to Detroit and get one and, give them a little bit of a test. I think it could be fun. It'll be a lot more fun than knowing that, okay, the Warriors are going to, grind out the Grizzlies because they can't score enough. It's just cross uh conference matchups throughout the
It,
whole playoffs instead of just in the finals. I
it,
think it's kind of what they're going for more than just we're gonna get a bunch of sweeps. I think they're looking at it'd be cool for the Clippers and the Bucks to play in the playoffs.
yeah, but I think one thing that would concern the players as well in this situation is the travel. Think about you go say for example, the Clippers play the Celtics or whatever, and you gotta go back and forth, and especially for like games 5, 6, and 7. So you gotta play a game, fly back out to the other coast, play another game if necessary, fly out to the other coast. Then if necessary for game 7, fly back out. And so, that could be a lot, a lot of miles, a lot of fatigue, especially if they're playing every other day.
Yeah, I think that the beginning, the first couple of rounds, it probably would not be an issue because they're so spaced out anyway. Like they play one game, then they get 3 days off, and then they play game two, and then they may get 2 days off, and then they play game three. Kind of that first round is always funky with the scheduling. But yeah, as you get to the semifinals and the finals, not so much the finals because the finals are spaced out for TV, so they could. I'm pretty sure they could, as they did for this year during the season, incorporate in the scheduling, a extra few days in between the games to give the guys the rest that they need. Because, coming into this year, that was the big deal where the teams weren't going to have as many back to backs and you weren't going to get as many wraparound games as far as, if you play on a Saturday and Sunday, you wouldn't necessarily have to play on that Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
So they can always do some tweaking if they get the guys in the room and sit down and decide this is what we're going to do, and then present a schedule to the TV because that's really all the schedule's for, anyways, for TV.
Yeah.
At that point, once you get to the playoffs, but
Yeah.
it's a good discussion point. Like me and you, there's different points of view about
Yeah.
it, and that's I think what Adam Silver is really trying to generate. Just the
Yeah.
discussion on it alone gets people focused in on NBA. So
Yeah. I think maybe if you put like the top division winner against wild card number 2, second division winner against wild card number 1, and then you have the third division winner play the team that has like the third worst record, and then the final 2 teams play. Maybe that will tweak it up a little bit. I have to write it out for it to make a little more sense,
So you're
but
you're trying to go with more like how baseball does it, where like if you're the wild or football, where if you're the wild card team, if you don't have a bye as a number one team, you automatically have to go up against that number one team as a wild card.
exactly.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like we said, if they sat down and really committed to doing it, they could definitely come up with a formula that
Yeah,
could work
yeah,
and appease, the players. But a lot of this has to go through Players Association. They can't just
and
NBA
the
just say
owners,
tomorrow we're gonna make this
yeah,
happen. There's a
and the
process they have
owner,
to go through.
and the owners got to vote on it too, 3/4 anyway. So
Right. So it would definitely be like a year away if they or two before they, really went with it. But you got to get the ball rolling at some point. That's all Adam Silver did last week. And our little final bit of NBA news before the games resumed on Thursday was that Kawhi Leonard decided to shut it down for the season. He ended last season injured with a shoulder. Then he came back and then got hurt working out before training camp. And this quad has just kind of lingered all season. The Spurs doctor says that, according to their diagnosis, he's good to go. But he feels himself that he's not. So they're kind of at a standoff. And this is where we are, that he has decided to shut it down because the Spurs have always left it up to him. Whenever he felt good enough to play, just come on back. Well, he says that he doesn't feel good enough to play. Now he's out for the season. So this is a twofold question to Wayne. First off, relationship between the Spurs and Kawhi Leonard, how is that affected? And then on the court going forward, how does this affect the Spurs in their playoff run?
Well, for the playoff run, they're still going to make the playoffs. They have enough people. They have Marcus Aldridge. They still have a pretty mix of veterans and young guys, and they have Greg Popovich as a head coach. So they're going to be in the playoffs. They're going to have at least a second round meeting with the Rockets or Warriors, and so that should be a good series either way with those teams. And Kawhi Leonard, he knows his body better than anybody else. So if he feels like he's not at his best, at his peak athletic ability, 100%, then he can. I think he can shut it down. Only you know your body better than anybody else. So that's where I'm at with that. I think Kawhi's doing the right thing, and Kawhi's just letting his body heal on his time. Maybe there'll be a time where overtime can get collected, and you'll be able to he'll be able to come back, try to mend those fences with the Spurs, because I think it's a pretty icy relationship at this point. I don't know if the Spurs would get rid of Kawhi and try to get a number one pick out of it, which is what he is worth. So it's just like you said, it's been up to Kawhi, and he doesn't feel comfortable. Don't give him that power. If you feel that he's ready, don't give him that power to say, "Hey, I'm not ready. Let me shut it down." So we'll just have to see how that goes.
Well, I think that the Spurs, because of the classy way that they tend to operate, weren't trying to pressure the kid because they understand how valuable he is to their organization going forward. And I think that they, kind of left it up to him trying to extend the olive branch, in a way. If they say that, if he feels like, hey, y'all misdiagnosed this to begin with, then, that may have been their kind of thing to say, well, okay, so you've got your second opinion, you've done your things like that. We feel that you're good, but, still come back when you feel like it. So, it's a weird situation just because Kawhi Leonard is such a, I hate to use this phrase, but company man, as far as, not creating waves, not being outspoken. But like you said, if he feels like he can't go, then he can't go. And, good on the Spurs for not, making it like, he's trying to hold them up or, anything like that, that they're just saying, hey, he made his decision and now we can proceed the rest of the year not having to look over our shoulder like, when's he coming back? We know he's not going to be back, so we can move forward accordingly finally. So just an interesting year for Kawhi Leonard.
Very. And that affects my fantasy basketball team that I haven't looked at in weeks. So thanks a lot, Kawhi.
This episode of Know the Score is being brought to you by Blue Apron. So please sign up for Blue Apron. Start cooking your meals at home and eliminate grocery shopping. If you go through CSPN.us, click on the tab that says Blue Apron and sign up today, you'll get $30 off your first order. And you'll also start getting meals sent straight to your home, so no more trips to the grocery store. Everything will be packed inside. All the seasonings, all the ingredients, the measurements will be exact. All I have to do is follow the instructions, and 30, 45 minutes later, you've got fresh home cooked great meals, especially for people who are trying to keep up with that New Year's resolution of losing pounds and eating healthier. This is a great way to ensure that you do that and keep the podcast free. So CSPN.us and Blue Apron, do it today. Now, Dwayne, our final topic will be NASCAR. My final thought last week was on the Daytona 500, and particularly Bubba Wallace running in his first Daytona 500 and being the first full-time driver since 1971 on the circuit. Well, strange thing happened. Bubba Wallace finished second to race winner Austin Dillon in his first Daytona 500 start. Just a fantastic effort from Bubba. Like I said at the end of last week's show, he was starting inside the top 10. If he could have finished 10th in the top 10, that would have been a great day. To actually finish second and with maybe a little bit more experience, maybe could have pulled it out and got the win. Just a fantastic effort for him. Put a lot of eyes on the sport. He had a lot of pressure going into the race, a lot of hype leading up into the race, and he lived up to it. So great showing, race one for Bubba Wallace. Dwayne, your thoughts?
I'm extremely happy for Bubba Wallace, and definitely was a great race for him, for Petty Motorsports, to have Richard Petty's number and to carry on the 43 legacy, to ride that car to second place, especially since the last few drivers that have had the 43 haven't really been successful. I think there's going to be a bright future in the Monster Energy Cup Series for Bubba Wallace, and it's going to get more eyes, on the sport, and that's what NASCAR has been looking for. They've been looking for a long time to get to be more diverse, to be more, um, to have that diversity. And I know most of the traditional fan base would rather not have that, but it's going to happen. And we've seen it with Daniel Suarez from Mexico. We're seeing it with Bubba Wallace, African American driver. So it's happening. And, the winds are changing in the sport of NASCAR. And it's just something that is going to be great to watch out for. I didn't watch that much NASCAR last year. I think the whole stages thing kind of rubbed me the wrong way, but I'm going to watch a lot more this year. Because I've always kept up with it, and B, finally to see somebody, young and making waves, whether he wants to or not. He does know the magnitude and the impact of what he is doing. So it's going to just be fun to watch, see his progression throughout the year.
It would strike me as strange as a guy who covers hockey that you would say the stages rubbed you the wrong way. To me, now a NASCAR race is like a hockey game. You get a period, then you get intermission. Then you can go get a beer, go to the bathroom, kind of refresh yourself. And then you get the second period, then you get another intermission. And then you get the final period. I think it makes watching the race a lot better, a lot more enjoyable, because you can, it's like every other sport now. You know when the, quote unquote quarter or segment is going to end, and you kind of get a break and get a chance to kind of reset and recharge, and it gives teams like a kind of chance to like have a little halftime or a regrouping session.
Yeah, that's a valid point, and I think I just didn't understand it a lot
Right.
more versus because when I watch the races with my dad, I've been to 600s, I've been to 500s in Charlotte. So I've been to NASCAR races where it's just continuous, and that's just what I was used to.
Right.
So I guess me being part of that traditionalist, it was just a change that I was just like, okay, this is kind of weird. But now since you put it in that perspective, and I kind of didn't really see that perspective last year, it makes sense. You do have those periods, and you do have a break, and you do kind of get different names and different strategies at a certain point. So it makes sense now that it's explained, but last year I really did not have that knowledge, and it wasn't just the fact that the stages rubbed me the wrong way. I just didn't really watch it because I was watching other things, and I wasn't really keeping up with it like I normally do.
This is a weird time in NASCAR because not since probably the late 70s, early 80s is really like a changing of the guard happening right now where like a whole bunch of the established guys are all leaving and they're leaving in like clusters. Like, they're not leaving like one here, one there. We're getting like every year we've had somebody leave in like the last 3, 4 years. And it's starting to
Mm,
get a lot of like people like yourself, traditional guys who've been following NASCAR since the mid '90s or whatever when it really started to get majorly popular and had their favorite drivers for 20 years or 15 years or whatever, and now they're kind of lost because it's kind of like in wrestling, the new guys haven't been able to break that barrier to win enough where you get to know who they are and kind of pick up on, oh, you know what, I kind of like him.
right,
He's not my favorite, but what I'm saying, I do like how he drives or whatever. So now NASCAR is
right,
trying to get those new guys introduced to everybody all at once, and
yeah,
they're trying to play catch up a little bit. And I think it's their fan base is kind of in that same thing like you are, where they're like, I don't like this new era. They haven't gotten to the point where like I had to do with wrestling. Like I like this, and if I'm gonna enjoy it, even though it's not what I grew up with and what I would prefer it to be, I need to find out what I like about the new style of it and just look for that and be entertained and enjoy that.
yeah. That's kind of how hockey was after that 04-05 lockout. How they revamped the rules. Like you had a lot of it became more offensive focus, like more goals. Like for me, I like defense. I like shutouts, but when you have to change things up, it was something to adjust to, and but and I guess that's also kind of ties in with the playoffs as well. But that's still most of that still doesn't make sense to me. I'm still sticking to my guns on that one.
um, that's a little harder to explain. It's kind of like an elimination process. It's kind of like a tournament in per se, but you have 3 events per tournament, per round basically in the tournament. So you get 3 races, and whoever's at the bottom 3 at the end of those 3 races, they get chopped off. You get
Yeah,
3 more races, and you get 3 more guys, and then so at the end, what happens is you have 4 guys who can win the championship, and
yeah,
they basically
that
race the race to
yeah.
who comes in first amongst them 4.
Gotcha. Yeah, that part I was aware of. It was more of the just the stages and things like that. That
Yeah.
was just the part but it makes more sense now. That part does.
And what's been cool about the playoffs is the last few years, the actual winner of the race has actually been the champion. So it hasn't been like, the guys were racing in the back and, he won the championship because he finished 12th and the other guys behind him finished like, 20th or 15th or whatever. Most of the time, the top 4 drivers are like the top 4 guys in the race and they're switching the lead back and forth. So it's been really
Yeah,
exciting the past couple of years for NASCAR's last race of the season. So, like we said, Bubba Wallace is definitely going to generate more eyes, new eyes, and as long as he, finishes these races and just gains more experience, he's going to get better as the season goes on. He's had a really good advantage this year because Chevy is debuting a new car. And so all the teams that drive Chevy are kind of in the same starting point. Nobody really knows what the car is going to do. So with him being
right.
new to the sport, he doesn't have a feel, or new to the top series, he doesn't have a feel of what it should feel like. So, he may be able to figure out something earlier and jump out, and he may surprise people and actually get a win,
Mhm.
early on in this first part of the season. And then that would really be a media bonanza that NASCAR definitely would want to have on their hands. So we'll definitely keep you updated on the Bubba Wallace process and their progress, here on Know the Score. So at
Mhm.
this point, Dwayne, to anything you want to talk about that we didn't talk about, or give your shout outs and thank yous?
I just want to say thank you as always. This has been fun since I started doing this a few months ago. I also wanted to say that the my favorite time of year is coming, March Madness. In spite of all the controversy with the FBI investigation, it's still going to be a fun thing to watch. Hopefully, we will see. Me personally, I'm going to the bar today to try to watch this Kansas Texas Tech game. Um, until proven otherwise, the streak is still intact, and hopefully, if Kansas wins, they get a share of number 14 to break that record, and we'll just see how everything else plays out when that game happens in Lubbock today. So, route chalk, go Jayhawks.
All right. My final thought will be first about Tiger Woods, y'all. Don't look now, but Tiger Woods is starting to show more flashes of the old Tiger than he's shown in the previous times he's tried to come back from his
Mm.
back injury. He's +1. He made the cut. He's going to play through the weekend. I think he's like around 12th or 13th on the leaderboard. So, within striking distance, they're playing down in Florida. They've got a lot of wind, and so that's keeping the scores kind of down. And Tiger's starting to kind of have to, use some of that old creativity. And he's putting really good. His short games keeping him in the tournament, and he seems confident and he looks good and he's smiling, and he seems to be kind of right where he wants to be, getting ready for the Masters. And we all know that if he is healthy and he does feel good and he feels confident about his game, that that's his home. So if there is a course that he could kind of stir the echoes, it would be at Augusta. So kind of been foiled and fooled by Tiger in these comebacks, only to have him walk off the tee after 9 holes and not finish tournaments and things. But it looks like this time that he's really, in a good spot as far as his health goes. And it looks like he's actually going to be able to kind of show us some of his old game. And nobody can bring people to the TV like Tiger Woods can on a Sunday in a big tournament. I still think he has that type of drawing power if he can show and prove that he's healthy enough to do it. So,
First sizzle.
and my final thought will be just thoughts and prayers with Nabias Wilborn and his family, our co-host here at Know the Score. He lost his grandmother this week, and so
Mm.
it's going to be a hard afternoon for him today. So just let him know that we here at Know the Score and TSPN have him in our thoughts and prayers, his whole
Absolutely.
entire family, and reach out to him and give him a shout and just let him know you're thinking about him. So shout
Indeed.
out to Nabias and his whole family. And
Absolutely.
on that note, for the Libra icon, I'm Don Delarente, and now you know the score.